used to tease her at school. "He's trouble. We must keep out of his way," she said, but it was too late. He stopped in front of them. His brown hair stood up on end like a stook of corn. The bridge of his nose was spattered with freckles, and his cheek was smeared with dirt. "How's old Faggy?" he asked with a glint of humour in his green eyes. "Does she miss me?" "She never said so." Catherine unhooked a stray bramble from her skirt. Matty had left school the previous year, his income from work being more useful to his family than the education provided by an elderly spinster. Not that old Faggy was a bad teacher. Pa set great store by her methods. She'd taught him to read and write when he was a young man. "She probably didn't notice me and Jervis were gone," Matty said, referring to one of his older brothers. There were seemingly endless Carter children, some still at home, and others long grown up and moved away. But Matty had two older brothers who still lived in Overshill. Jervis, the eldest, who laboured on the farm when he wasn't lurking on the Canterbury to London road, waylaying any unfortunates whose carriages had become stuck in the mud, and Stephen, the middle one, who was apprenticed to Overshill's blacksmith. "She's as deaf as an adder and blind as a bat." Catherine couldn't help wondering if old Faggy's afflictions were more contrived than real, her way of coping with the challenge of maintaining discipline in the classroom. What the eye didn't see, the heart didn't grieve over. If she did notice the older boys getting up to no good, flicking pieces of chalk at the girls, she would send them outside to chop wood. "Get out," she'd shout after them. "I don't want none of you besoms in here." "I never thought I'd say this, but now that I'm having to earn my living, I wish I was back at school," Matty said. "We don't feel the same, I'm afraid. It's a lot more peaceful without you," Catherine said. "What have you got in your bag?" "Nothing." Matty's fingers tightened around the Hessian sack. "You must have something. Show us." She reached out to take it, but he hugged it tight to his chest. "It's none of your business." His eyes flashed with annoyance tinged with fear. If as a small boy he hadn't realised scaring the life out of her with slugs and slowworms, or laughing at her when she filled her shoes as well as her bucket with water at the pump in the farmyard, Catherine might have backed down. But remembering the sensation of the mouse's teeth nibbling at the back of her neck, and the sheer panic as it slid between her skin and the fabric of her blouse while they sat in class at old Faggy's, she made up her mind. She grabbed at the sack. "No, miss, please don't." Matty tore it from her fingers and threw it back over his shoulder. But it was too late. She knew what he'd been up to from the scent the Hessian had left on her skin. "Leave him alone," Emily sighed. "He isn't worth our notice." "Where did you get them onions from?" Catherine said. "I haven't got no onions. I've been collecting herbs from me ma." "I can smell 'em." Catherine watched his face turn dark, red like boiled beetroot. "Where did you get them from?" she repeated. "I found them by the wayside." Unable to meet her gaze, he traced circles in the earth with his boot, showing off the scuffed leather patches across the toe. "You stole 'em," she said, shocked. "You took them from my pa, you thieving scoundrel." Her blood surged with fury at his betrayal of her father's trust. Pa had a soft spot for the Carters, although she didn't know why, when none of them looked as if they'd ever had a wash in their lives. The Carter family rented the cottage at Toad's Bottom, not far from Wanstall Farm, where Catherine lived, with her parents and brother John. Matty and Jervis worked for Catherine's pa, who had also employed their father, George Carter, for as long as she could remember. "If I'd have picked up things I'd just found lying around, and they did belong to your pa, he wouldn't notice as much." "Of course he would." Pa counted each and every onion. That's how he'd made a success of the farm, and why Squire Temple showed his gratitude by keeping the rent the same year after year. He looked after the land, ploughed the straw and muck back into the ground, walked the fields to check on the crops, and sent the labourers out to pick the caterpillars and mildewed leaves off the hops. He knew every stone, every tree, every bird's nest, every flower. "I'm going to make sure he hears about this." Matty lashed out and grabbed Emily's bonnet from her head, as she was the closest to him. Catherine tried to snatch it back, but it was too late. "No," Emily cried.